All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Maddie King, EOS Group's marketing manager, and presenting today is Greg Bloom, one of our senior consultants. The goal for today is to provide a 30-minute presentation with time after for questions and answers. This webinar will be recorded for your use, and I will send an email with a link to the recording and contact information. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Greg.
Great. Thanks, Maddie. It's a pleasure to meet with you all today, and especially have the platform to discuss Eos Navigator, something that I am truly passionate about. And with that, let me go ahead and give you a little bit more information about myself. Again, Greg Bloom. I am the Eos Navigator product manager. I've been with the organization for over 20 years now in a variety of capacities. In addition to being product manager, I also serve as account manager for many of our larger enterprise clients. I'm also the liaison with Sage's development team, as well as the Autodesk partner liaison within EOS Group. All right, next up, review the agenda that we'll be working from today. Once we get done with the introductions, I'll provide a brief overview of the product, then move on to the demonstration portion, which will take up the bulk of our session, and then that'll be followed by Q&A and then a few wrap-up comments that we'll make. Okay, next, a few administrative notes. We've put everybody's phones on mute. Sorry for that, but we are trying to keep the background noise to a minimum. If you have trouble hearing us, or if you can't see the screen, please feel free to use the hand raise option in the console to notify us. Additionally, the Q&A option is available to send comments or questions. The questions that we can respond to during the flow of the demonstration, I will. Otherwise, we will table those to the end of the meeting, in which we can give your questions more attention. Next, who is Eos? For many of you mythology enthusiasts, you know that she's the Greek goddess of dawn. Hopefully, most of you are familiar with the organization. Our roots are with Timberline, now Sage, where after years of on-the-ground experience, our founders left to build a business servicing premier estimating clients. 25 years later, our company has grown to almost 50 employees, working remotely across North America and servicing the AEC market. We provide a full range of consulting and development services to deliver cost estimating and benchmarking solutions for the enterprise clients like you. In addition to the EOS Navigator product, we currently market a project history module within our larger Cortex product suite and our reseller of Sage estimating products. And please reach out to us if you're interested in learning more about any of these products. All right. Next, EOS Navigator. So we pulled this from our website, and just to read through it quickly, EOS Navigator is our next generation management system designed to work seamlessly with Sage Estimating and EOS Cortex. It provides the tools that today's organizations need to manage the estimating process across the enterprise. And it accomplishes this by providing unique workflow, integration, and collaboration features. I also want to point out that Navigator is a ground-up rewrite of our legacy EOS Explorer product, and it was also specifically designed to integrate with the SQL version of Sage Estimating. Okay, the roadmap. So, here we are today in March. Looking back real quickly, our 2.4 release, our 2.4 version was released in July. I'm sorry. It included many new exciting integration capabilities. I also want to note that during the 2.4 release, we implemented a new license management control to align with the subscription renewal model that we are now using. So it's something worth noting for those of you that haven't yet upgraded. Version 2.5, which was initially intended to be a minor end-of-year release, was expanded to include features like project teams, and then information panel layouts and other exciting enhancements, as we intended to promote the principles of team estimating. Ultimately, we decided to wait for the first quarter of 2021 to release, and as many of you know, it will be available next week. Once complete, we'll turn our attention to 3.0. This will be a major release. In addition to being compatible with Sage's 64-bit processing version of estimating, branded 21.1, I believe. It will also have a new project request subsystem, and we're also going to expend some significant energy on uplifting the UI to provide new visualization capabilities. Okay, a few highlights for the release. I had mentioned project teams in brief, but to offer a little bit more, it is a complete re-implementation of the old resources and events subsystem that existed in the old EOS Explorer product. Very excited about that. Early feedback from clients is very positive, and it's a feature that we plan to continue to advance in future releases. Project board is an alternate visualization option for viewing project metadata, and we'll be taking a closer look at this today. But it's something that that's been in the works for quite some time, and something we're very excited about it. Version collection panel is an expansion of the old estimate version history dialog, very similar to the estimate collection panel in terms of its capabilities, but as the name implies, it allows you to expose previous estimate versions and then, review the properties and ultimately give you better accessibility to launching those versioned estimates inside of Sage. We've made quite a few changes to the ability to display information in the collection panels at all 3 levels, project components and estimates. And as you'll see during the demonstration, we also now have the ability to save and restore more setting or options than we previously did. We've taken that same concept of saved layouts and applied it to the information panel, which is an enhancement that that we added over the life of the release, and something we're very excited about. Based on market feedback, we decided to make some very significant technical changes to the document collection panel. The changes are very exciting and something that we will be building on in future releases. And last but not least, as with really every release, we spent some significant time and energy assessing the performance and stability of the product. In this case, we targeted the memory management and the opportunity to reduce the overall footprint of the product as deployed in your environments. So, very exciting stuff. All right, and with that, let's get started with the demonstration. Okay, and here are the workflows that I plan to present. This will give me an opportunity to reinforce some basic concepts of Navigator, as well as an opportunity to highlight our recent progress. And with that, let me transition to our virtual machine. Some quick background, this is an Azure VM that I'm remoting to. So it's not on-prem here, but it does have the latest version of Sage and Navigator installed to it, and it's what I'll be using for the demonstration. With that, let me go ahead and launch EOS Navigator. It has, for those of you that haven't been in Navigator before, it has a classic Windows experience with a tree on the left-hand side here, in this case organized by sectors or project types, if you will. And then on the right, in the active workspace, we're showing a list of projects that are available inside the system. In this case, there's 114 total projects in our catalog. You'll see, in addition to the name of each product, we have some additional supporting information, properties, if you will, client status, project lead, etc. And within this panel, I can select an alternate layout. In this case, I'm going to select detail to expand the information to include things like project size. So the first thing I want to point out is we're moving forward with technical advancements is the ability to reshape the data set here. We have some controls that are available from the row header. In this case, I'm just going to choose to remove columns. A nice handy feature that we actually learned about from experiencing some of Sage's spreadsheet layout capabilities. As you probably saw before, we also have the ability to insert additional columns. So this is an example of a project attribute that I'm adding, and it's intended to distinguish what office the proposal is being generated from. Okay, next I want to point out that as I make changes to the layout, it is now being rendered in an unsaved state. We know that because there's a little asterisk here. I'm going to come back to that later, but we're trying to do a better job notifying you if the save layout has been altered. We have the ability within the layout to group. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and group by status. We also have the ability to filter. So in this case, I'm going to filter by bid date and set some constraints here, greater than or equal to. Let's just take a look at the projects that are in the queue for this year, or this year and ahead. So you can see we have a total of 20 projects out of the 114 that were initially in the collection, 11 of which are in a bidding state, and then we have 5 that are on hold for one reason or another, and then a few that are in an upcoming or yet to be started state. Okay, next I want to point out the fact that this grid can be exported to Excel. For those that are familiar with this feature, you might notice some formatting improvements as we've tried to align the output with what's available, what's been customized inside the grid. And for those of you that haven't had an opportunity to work with the Excel export, this is flat, fully functional data in Excel. You can create formulas to add it up. You can pivot off of this data to perform additional analytics, et cetera, and then once satisfied, you can save this file, email it to a friend, post it to a shared server for, say, management review or collaboration, et cetera. Returning to Navigator, I want to go back to my layout selection list. In addition to the layouts that we saw down here at the bottom, I want to call attention to the list of actions or operations that are now available. This is a change or an improvement over the previous release in which these actions weren't exposed. And I'm going to go ahead and select Save New Layout. So basically what I'm going to do is copy I'm going to save the changes that I made to detail. And I'm going to add a name in here. Status. And maybe filtered. There we go. And let's go take a look at that. So I'll go into the Edit Layout dialog. The majority of this dialog appears the same as it previously had. You have the ability to select from an available field list. You can view the columns that have been selected. You do have the ability to remove and add columns as well as reorder them. But really, I wanted to call attention to this bottom section, this new advanced settings frame here that now displays the sorting option that you've made. So in this case, we're sorting by, or the rows are sorted by name. It also shows the filter that had been applied and the fact that we are now grouping by status. And if you wanted to aggregate any values like the total project amount, you could also set that in here as well. So again, this is new, but what it means is down the road, maybe next month, I could select this layout, see the same structure with the revised data set, and then reintroduce my workflow of exporting the data and sharing it with others. So we're very excited about this. I think it's an opportunity to continue to push this idea of project management or portfolio management, if you will, inside a Navigator, and it's largely drawn from feedback from our existing client base. All right. moving on, let me go ahead and reset this guy. So generally speaking, the idea of managing your portfolio has always been accomplished by viewing rows in the grid. Classic implementation. With Navigator 2.5, we've also implemented the idea of tiles. So you now have the ability to view projects by tiles on a board. So in this case, oops, I did that a little premature. I also want to highlight the ability to filter the data set based on the selection in the tree. So in this case, we're just looking at the healthcare projects within our entire portfolio. And again, we now have a tile that represents each distinct project. In this case, the projects are organized into columns based on status. And we also have the ability to view columns by other fields like project lead. So as we delve in here a little bit, we can see our entire collection of projects. A few things to point out. The project information is standard for each tile. So in addition to the project name and the project ID, we have the project lead, as well as the status, the size, the duration, and the amount, should there be one. That's standard for version 2.5. In addition to that, each tile has a left margin, the color highlight that communicates the status. So blue equals bidding, green equals awarded, red equals lost. Among other things, we can use the board to evaluate project assignments. So in this case, we see that Brad Sparrow is responsible for 11 projects, whereas Mildred is only responsible for 2. So if we're trying to do any sort of, resource management or resource loading, I should say, we may conclude that we need to offload some of Brad's work. I hear that Molly's an up-and-comer, so we can simply drag the project tile over to her column, and in the background, that simply reassigns a project to Molly Donaldson. Okay. From there, we can go ahead and drill into the project. For those of you that aren't familiar with this view, in addition to looking at your projects in mass, you can individually evaluate or view the details of a project. Because Navigator is configurable, your specific implementation could look quite different than this. But to give you an idea of what a default configuration might offer, we have the project information panel consuming the left half of the active workspace. Over on the right, we have split panels that show the estimate collection, more specifically the SAGE estimates that are associated to this North Florida medical facility. Down at the bottom, we have some summary level information about the final category costs for the selected estimates within the project, in this case, this combined estimate. And then a nice pretty pie chart that visually represents the associated or the proportional category costs. All right, a little more detail. Let's go back to the project information panel. A lot of metadata here that you can look at. This is configurable per implementation, and each project can have different project attributes based on the project type. We've done some back-end work to better administer the use of the project information panel. Optionally, administrators can choose to either limit the input of certain fields, say like the project size field, where you don't want someone to add a value to the list, or the ability to, quite the opposite, support additional values. We've also switched from a flat text field for, say, the state and country to a managed reference list as we begin to move that functionality forward. But most importantly, we have taken the same concepts that we applied for the collection where we can customize the grid, and we now have the ability to modify the appearance of the information panel. So in the same way that we did it previously, I can create a new layout. And let me just go ahead and type that in there. And then we get our edit dialog, similar experience to what we saw before. So available fields on the left, use fields over here on the right. You'll see that unlike the equivalent collection panel edit layout dialog, the fields are grouped. These are the section groupings that you can see over here in the panel. So we now have the ability to rearrange the fields. We have the ability to remove sections completely. Let me see, do a little bit of quick customizing here. You know, maybe I am just looking for a tighter experience. It's something more specific to what I typically need. Just demonstrate the ability to rename a section. We can also add completely new sections and reorder the sections. And an important note, fields can be intermingled within section regardless of whether they're system fields or attributes, which some of you may be aware of was a limitation in the past. Okay, so now what was 4 or 5 sections appears as 2, so nice tight organization there. So pretty straightforward stuff, very exciting. You can have unlimited number of layouts. Layouts can be shared or private. And our thought is that as the project evolves, your needs will be different, both as users and in terms of different users needing different information, as well as the project evolves. You may want to focus on different types of fields for your work. Okay, so that's the end of project information. Next, I want to move on to project notes. So project notes was a panel that was introduced in the previous version 2.4. I want to quickly revisit it before discussing some new integration options that are available to us. So for those of you that are familiar with the Sage estimating estimate notes, it's quite similar. It's very similar to the implementation that we've applied on the Navigator side. You can have an unlimited number of note types, or tabs, if you will. These are all managed in the administrative module. So I can click on a few of these. And you can see that the data in here is rich text. So in addition to just having the information, you can also apply different colors, different font sizes, underlines, bold, that sort of thing. And then objects like the checkboxes and the indenting, bulletization, that sort of thing. Okay, basic stuff. Every project has its own unique set of project notes are specific to each project. As you copy or move a project, the information is retained. What I wanted to show you here was our ability to export project notes. Click on our new action menu that's available from the project notes panel. And after our project progress dialog wraps up here, we'll take a quick look at the output. So first and foremost, we now have the ability to integrate with Word in addition to Microsoft Excel. In this case, we are exporting data to a grid that's been predefined in a template. This is some sample metadata that we want to show, and then each section below it contains the output of the individual project note tabs. So pretty straightforward stuff. What I'm demonstrating here is really a capability of Navigator. This report of and to itself doesn't come out of the box, but it's a demonstration of what's possible, and certainly something that we would be glad to work with you on to implement. Okay, next up, project teams. So as noted earlier, project teams is a re-implementation of our previous resource management feature from EOS Explorer of old, and it's an integral part of the future of Navigator. This is a big deal to us and something that we plan to invest in as we move forward. So as shown here, we have a simple grid. The grid has a collection of roles with a user assigned to each role. This allows the project lead to manage the team composition. Early on in the project, you may have a list of unassigned roles, noting that down the road you're going to need certain positions filled. An example of that, I suppose, would be this project scheduler here. So I know at some point down the road I'm going to need a basic project schedule. I don't know who it's going to be when I created the project, but when I get down to 90% complete, I've got to assign somebody. In this case, Chris is available, so I'm going to plug him in. We also have the ability to add additional roles. I'm sorry. Let me go ahead and plug in a procurement specialist. And in this case, I'm not really sure who it's going to be. I just know I need to fill that role. So I'm just going to tag a generic user, what we refer to as an ad hoc member, to the team, just so that there's some representation there. The list of roles are managed inside of the administrative module. You also have the ability to affiliate a user to one or more roles. As we saw, Chris Platt is specifically tagged as a scheduler, as well as possibly some other roles. The roles that are defined and the people that are associated to them can be used can be associated to in other ways within the software. So the best example of that is the estimator, or as I've retagged it, the estimate lead. Because Virginia Dupe was part of the estimating team, she can be tagged as the estimator record for this final combined estimate. We also have the ability to change that assignment. Let me scroll down here. Maybe we're far enough along in the proposal development that Molly wants to take full control of the final evolution of the estimate itself. So she wants to identify herself. And you can see in making that assignment, Molly now shows up in the list. She shows up with this yellow background because she's a conditional or ad hoc user, meaning that she wasn't predictively defined in the project team. In order to change that, we can simply go ahead and uncheck the ad hoc user option, and she becomes a full member. We also have the ability to, I guess you'd say, inactivate a member. Let's go ahead and make that change there to both Maud and Virginia. And this gives us an opportunity to retain project team members that played a role that are no longer active on the project. So I think a great example of that would be, I want to know who was responsible for the estimate when it was completed. In this case, Virginia. In this case, Maud. But I don't want to consider them for future assignments within the context of this project. And down the road, that'll have other positive benefits, things like limiting distribution lists and event notifications to the people that are active on the project. But for now, it just allows us to filter lists so that we're not so that we're only looking at the members that are current. Okay, so that's kind of a quick pass through project teams. Again, in summary, it's a big part of where we're trying to go with the product. We wanted to introduce this in a very kind of clean and straightforward implementation. While I didn't explicitly note it before, the users that are available are actually the system users or participants that have access to Navigator. So we're tying that directly into your AD user group. Which will provide some additional benefits down the road. And while you see a kind of a concept of an implementation here, all the data is going to be specific to your your configuration. So you'll have a lot of control in terms of what you show here and how you want to show it. All right, moving on. Next up, I want to focus on individual estimates. So I'm going to drill into the final or the current estimate that represents the project. It's a combined estimate, which really in essence is a merge of the component estimates or discipline estimates. Same general look and feel. Over here on the left, we've got the project information panel. You can see here that we have layout capability also available down at the estimate level. Over on the right, we have our totals panel and then our pie chart. It's really this version panel that I want to call attention to. So for those of you that have implemented estimate version history, in addition to having the dialog available, we now have a dedicated panel that you can dock inside of the view. Once docked, you can see the version history. So in this particular case, I've had 4 revisions. You can also see up here. And you've got your basic metadata, when they were created and what the cost evolution was for each of those estimates. If you want to see some additional information, yes, we also have layouts here. So as an example, we could look at our category costs, study that information, and as we also have in the dialog, we have the ability to view our notes. These are editable and accessible to you. Okay. In addition to that, we've also developed a representative report. And this really is our opportunity to highlight the fact that Navigator allows custom report panels to appear inside of the views. The panels can contain information drawn from both Navigator and Sage. And we have quite a bit of flexibility in terms of how we render that information. In this case, it's effectively a pivot report. Let me go ahead and hide this guy, where we have the estimate versions as columns or column groups, really. And then as rows, we have a progression of division, group, phase, and phase that we can drill into. But rather than doing that here, what I wanted to do is export this to Excel. Opportunity to look at what the functionality, how the functionality would appear in an exported state. All righty, and here we are with the data exported to Excel. Again, it's basically the same experience. We've just made an exported copy of it and loaded up the Excel workbook. A couple things to point out. First and foremost, we've converted all the values to live formulas. So in essence, you could use this as a working document to consider changes and see what the variance is across your project list. We also have outlining implemented, so we can now get down to the detail level. Let's see, we've gone from division down to group phase. We can also further expand these guys out, so you can see the phase level records and and the variance between. So in this case, this lifting and hoist equipment rental was added during the 3rd version. You can see the additive cost there, and so on and so forth. Okay, and with that, let me go ahead and close that out. Jump back here to Navigator. The final thing that I want to point out is document collection. So we'll go back to our project view. So North Florida Medical. In addition to managing estimates, we can also manage documents. So you can see here that, you can see here that we've got a list of folders. We've got a list of files here. For point of reference, these files were actually the ones created during the demonstration with the document collection panel. I'm sorry, with the project notes panel being exported to project summary, and then the version comparison being exported to Excel. Couple key points here. This visually is quite different from what it used to be. Rather than having a split pane where we had a folder hierarchy over on the left and then the contents for each folder on the right, we now have a flat list You can navigate into folders and see the level that you're at from the from the path that appears up here on the right. We just felt that this was a basic overall experience. So let me go ahead and show you how we can drill into the folders. And as we've done in other cases, other panels, we also have the ability to show what we call layouts, but convey or communicate the objects using other methods that are typical to Windows Explorer. Let me go ahead and expand this guy out. You can see the contents with the larger thumbnails. So here's some renderings, some schematics of the site, and then I can demonstrate the fact that these files can be launched. And in this case, I've got the drawing file associated to Paint. On probably an enterprise system, it'll be associated with something a little bit different than that, but here you go. Okay, so technically, there's a lot of work that went into the document collection panel. Functionally, it's quite similar to what you had before. Again, it's more stable and performant. It responds immediately to changes. If someone else were to drop a document into this particular project folder, it would be refreshed to show the revised contents. Okay, and I think that gets us through the demonstration. Let me jump back to yep, our workflows, and that covers it. So, project folders was the end of it. There are several other features that were added to the product that I couldn't do justice to in a 30-minute presentation. A lot of work on the admin side to clean up list management and centered around the project team's effort. We had to make changes to what previously was the security tab. So for the administrators on the call, please take note and be ready to take a close look at some of the changes on that side as well. All righty, moving on. We're on to the final segment here and ready for questions.
Great, thank you so much, Greg. One of the first questions that we have is, can you view the estimates in Sage?
I'm guessing that question had to do with estimate versions, and the answer to that is absolutely. So let me jump back here in our sample project and drill into our estimate view. We've always had the ability to open up the most current estimate, the working estimate, if you will. In exposing all the versions, we also have the ability, or we made it easier, I should say, for you to open up a previous version. So let me go ahead and do that. I can demonstrate this real quick. And you're going to get this note as the estimate launches. What it's basically saying to you is, yes, you can see the details inside of Sage, but no, you can't save changes. We refer to that as a snapshot. What's technically happening in the background is that estimate is being copied so that you have full access to manipulate the information, to create new layouts, to reassign values, to play what-if games, to perform takeoff if you want, or to exclude items using the alternates capabilities. But as the Sage banner says here, any changes that you make are temporary and will be discarded when you close the estimate. So, when I do in fact close this estimate, those changes are lost. We're talking to Sage about providing an option to effectively offer a save as feature, but that isn't currently available. Thus all the warnings and notifications before you get in there that you know that you're not going to be able to recover that information. All right, great. What else do you have,
Great.
Maddie?
The next one is, can you do comparison reports from two separate estimates, or does it need to be done under the version feature?
Great question. So, interestingly enough, that report was intended to be multi-purpose. We absolutely can use the report to to select a collection of estimates and line those up in the same hierarchical progression that we had for versions and generate that. I'm not in a state where I can quickly show you that, but definitely available. As I mentioned earlier, the reports are showcase solutions and could be, could really be whatever you need them to be. They don't need to be organized by group phase and phase. It could be uniformat or any other structure. But yeah, we definitely have that capability.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Probably one of the most important ones. What versions of Timberline/Sage estimating does this work with?
Yes, so we are compatible with all of the versions of Sage that Sage supports. So that currently is 1911, 1912, and 20.1. And then, of course, when Sage comes out with their 21.1, we'll be compatible with that as well.
Fantastic. The next one, can you talk more about the new license manager?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I probably caught somebody's attention there earlier in the slides. With 2.4, we introduce new a new tool that enforces the licensing, so that when a user logs into Navigator, they check out a license from the pool. So if you have 10 licenses in the pool and you check out one, then there's 9 left. At the point where you get to I think the last 80 or 90%, it starts to send out messages saying, you're about your cap. As an administrator, you do have the ability to view the active users in the system. We don't yet have the ability to purge users. So it really is going to come down to coordinating with team members if you need to get in and you're running low on licenses. At any time, you can increase or reduce your licenses based on the needs of the organization.
Perfect. The next one, what is feature access control?
Yeah, that's an important question, and I actually so feature access control is it's a global toggle that restricts certain features within Sage Estimating. Really, all the management features that you'd see in the file menu, things like opening an estimate, creating an estimate, deleting and renaming an estimate. It's an agreement that we made with Sage that some clients, by the nature of Navigator as a managed system, some clients want all of their users to work through Navigator as opposed to having 2 options to perform those operations. And what that gives us is the ability to control accessibility, which is important if we enable things like project access rights. It also helps us enforce versioning. In the example that we previously looked at, there's no way within Navigator to get into a previous version of an estimate in a not-shot state to make changes, which is important if you have a locked or an archived estimate. And then in the case of project teams, which is, by the way, feature access, dependent on feature access control, we have the ability to relate the estimator assignment to the project team in a way that we really couldn't if a user was making that change exclusively or independently inside of Sage.
Great, thanks, Greg. I think that's
Yep.
all that we have time for. I will follow up with an email and a link to the recording. And if you have any questions, please reach out to Greg or myself. And thank you, Greg. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.